This year, myself and Georgie were chosen to take part in the Listen from Auschwitz trip with the Holocaust Education Trust, a group which has been running this project for a number of years. We felt very lucky to be chosen to attend, however, felt unsure of what to expect from the journey. Everything happened very fast, and a few days before the trip, on the 25th of October, we attended a preparation seminar in order to mentally prepare us for the emotional journey we were about to take part in.
We felt honoured to have met Eva Clark, a Holocaust survivor who told us an incredible story. Hearing Eva's story prepared us for a trip to Auschwitz as we learned about her mother's life before the Holocaust. At the seminar, we asked Eva questions about herself and her mother in order to fully understand the true horrors of the Holocaust. Eva's birth was a miracle, as pregnant women were some of the first to be condemned to death, yet Anka managed to carry Eva to term without it going noticed. This story is important as it helps us remember and commemorate those who lost their lives. It also gives us an individual face to relate to during our trip in Auschwitz.
The first place we visited in Poland was Auschwitz, a Jewish cemetery. As groups, we walked around and learned about the story behind it. Before the war, 58% of the town were Jewish. By 1941, the entire Jewish population had been deported. In 1945, September, Jews returned to Auschwitz. In November 1950, 40 Jews remained in the town. In 1953, only 3 remained, but by 2000, only 1 Jew remained, named Simon Kluger. He now has a special gravestone in the cemetery. We also discovered that every gravestone had different symbols with different meanings. 2 pillars represents the temple, candlesticks, a woman, broken tree means a life was cut short, grapes is a rich life, and crown is a good name. It had been established in the 19th century and was a cemetery for all the Jews who had lost their lives. We were shocked to discover that during World War II, Germans had destroyed it, taking gravestones and using them for roads and pavements. After the war, Jews returned to repair the cemetery. 800 tombstones had been preserved. Despite not spending a long time in Auschwitz, we learned a lot. Reading the gravestones and the symbols helped us learn more about the people who were buried here. It also helped us learn about victims and helped us to rehumanise them and remember their lives before the war.
Neither of us will forget what it was like to visit Auschwitz I. Even before we entered the gate, there was an aura of tension throughout the group. The first thing any of us noticed was the entrance, a large sign saying "Work sets you free." The place itself had a strange atmosphere, as it seemed peaceful and quiet. On the outside, it would be difficult to decipher the true horrors of the camp. The first place we visited was Block 6, set up to show the conditions in which prisoners were living in. However, the most poignant attribute of this block were pictures of prisoners lining the walls, identifying their race, age and occupation. It really put into perspective the mass scale of what the Nazis did, as these pictures could not have been a quarter of the people they terrorised. We then moved on to visit what was known as a prison block. Inside there were cells, and again we were shown the living conditions of the prisoners. In the basement there were 3 different rooms, all used for punishment. The worst of all was a small enclosed room in which prisoners were made to stand all night with no rest. Until now, we were both feeling increasingly more horrified. The camp, which had seemed so peaceful before, was now nothing but an image of deception. One thing Auschwitz I is famous for is the cases of prisoner belongings, the most horrifying being the hair. And even though I had heard so much, nothing could have prepared me for what it would actually be like to see something like that. Nothing could prepare either of us for what we saw that day, especially not for the multiple cases of belongings. Shoes, glasses, suitcases, kitchen utensils and prosthetic legs. However, the worst of all for me was when we visited the gas chamber. Never had I experienced such a change in atmosphere. I remember noticing scratches on the walls, and I think I was too shocked to do anything but stare.
Auschwitz-Birkenau was a very strange place to visit, as almost instantly there was an unsettling feeling throughout our group. The sight of the train tracks leading in was something I'd seen only in history books. The real-life sight was incredibly strange. The first thing we did was visit the watchtower. Looking around, it seemed as though the camp itself would never end. There were remnants of chimneys stretching miles and miles across, all the way back to the tree line. We got to see what the living conditions of the prisoners were like. It was quite early in the day, however, it was incredibly dark and freezing cold. We could only imagine what it was like for the Jewish people living here in nothing but a thin striped uniform. Beside the living quarters was a hut filled with toilets. I remember being horrified as we heard a story of a woman talking about how it was a privilege to clean them. We also visited the children's living quarters, a tiny building filled with bunk beds of 3. We had to use torches as it was so dark, and the whole time I was there, I thought about the hundreds of children huddled here in the darkness with no torch like we had. This has probably been the most incomprehensible experience either of us had ever had. It never truly sunk in where we were or what we were hearing, at least not until the end of the day, where we attended a memorial with Rabbi Marcus. We heard a prayer sung in Hebrew for the lost souls of the Holocaust, and we heard a poem from a 14-year-old prisoner talking about his plans for the future. Only at this point do I remember fully comprehending that day, and I do not think I will ever forget the moment of mutual understanding and sorrow throughout our group of 200.
When I grow up and reach the age of 20, I'll set out to see the enchanting world. I'll take a seat in a bird with a motor. I'll rise and soar high into space. I'll fly, sail, hover over the lovely faraway world. I'll soar over rivers and oceans. Skyward shall I ascend and blossom, a cloud my sister, the wind my brother. I'll marvel at the Euphrates and the Nile. I'll see the pyramids and the Sphinx of ancient Egypt, where the goddess Isis reigned. I'll fly over Niagara Falls and immerse myself in a searing Sahara dune. I'll drift over the cloud-strewn cliffs of Tibet and the mysterious land of the wizards. And once I extricate myself from the scorching, terrifying wave of heat, I'll meander over the icebergs of the north. By wind, I'll cross the great Kangaroo Island and the ruins of Pompeii and the holy land of the Old Testament, and over the land of the renowned Homer, I'll fly slowly, slowly, hovering lazily, and thus, in the enchantments of this world, skyward shall I soar and blossom, a cloud my sister, the wind my brother. The theme of this year was to not be a bystander, therefore meaning we should not stand by and do nothing when others need help. The heroes of the Holocaust are a prime example of those who are not bystanders. Irina Sendler, a Polish nurse and social worker, organised the smuggling of some 2,500 children out of Warsaw ghettos and had them placed with Polish families, orphanages and convents. She gave each child a new identity and carefully recorded their names and placements so that they could be returned to surviving relatives after the war. Her work was interrupted when she was arrested, tortured and sentenced to death by the Gestapo in 1943. However, she was successfully rescued by Zagota before her scheduled execution, before going into hiding and resuming her work for the remainder of the war. Irina is quoted as saying, "Every child saved with my help is the justification of my existence on this earth and not a title to glory." For her amazing and courageous work during the Holocaust, she was awarded the Order of the White Eagle by the Polish government in 2003.
Jane Haining was a Church of Scotland missionary originally from Dunscore in Dumfries and Galloway. She worked as matron of the girls' home at the Scottish Mission School in Budapest in Hungary. Most pupils were Jewish orphans, and despite being ordered to return to Scotland, she refused to leave the girls she was looking after and was eventually arrested by the Gestapo. She was reported to have died on July 15, 1944. In 1997, Jane Haining was honoured one of the Righteous Among Nations by the Yad Vashem Holocaust Education, Research and Commemoration Organisation in Israel. Her name is inscribed near that of Oskar Schindler. In Scotland, Jane Haining is commemorated by a stained glass window in Queen's Park Church in Glasgow. We would like to thank the Holocaust Education Trust for organising the Lessons from Auschwitz project and allowing us the incredible opportunity to go on such an amazing experience, as well as the educational advisors who came with us on our trip and were very patient throughout. We would also like to thank Rabbi Marcus, who conducted the memorial service at the end of the day. He was an incredible man, and neither of us will forget the speech he made at the end. Finally, we would like to thank our school, St Rochs Secondary, for allowing us the opportunity to go and visit Auschwitz.
If you ever get the chance to visit Auschwitz, I strongly recommend you do so, as it is a once-in-a-lifetime experience that you will never forget.